Okay, got a lot to go over this morning. This election is Kamala Harris's to lose, with Biden stepping aside and Harris now topping the ticket. The electoral map has now been cracked wide open. It no longer comes down to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. But she has yet to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders says he wants her to win, but he won't endorse her just quite yet. This election will be about voter turnout. Kamala Harris needs to make a deal with Bernie Sanders. On Wednesday, Harris came out in favor of the PRO Act, which would give the federal government more teeth when it attempts to enforce labor law. The PRO Act would make it easier for workers to engage in collective bargaining, and it would be the first step on the road to rolling back states passing right-to-work legislation that make it impossible for unions to collect dues. She is strong on abortion and, of course, LGBTQ issues. Kamala has expressed concern for the people of Gaza, and despite serving as the current president of the Senate, she didn't show up for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech on Wednesday before a joint session of Congress. After Netanyahu met with Joe Biden on Thursday, Netanyahu met privately with Vice President Harris, who came out of the meeting calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and then added, quote, "We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent," unquote. On climate, Politico reports Vice President Harris has repeatedly called for a ban on fracking. That could hurt her in the parts of Pennsylvania she wasn't going to win anyway. She has also endorsed the Green New Deal, and while serving in the Senate, she proposed a $10 trillion plan to fight climate change. She took the lead this year on the Biden administration's plan to forgive medical debt, it should be forgive medical debt. But she took the lead on the Biden administration's plan to forbid medical debt from being factored into anyone's credit score, like here in New York. You don't have to pay your medical bills here in New York. It doesn't affect your credit. It should be done nationwide, and then nobody should pay their medical bills. But we'll get to that in a future show. She's also come out in favor of forgiving student debt and has been a strong supporter of free tuition at public universities. In fact, in 2017, Kamala Harris, as senator, co-sponsored Bernie Sanders' bill to make college free to anyone who chooses to go. She wants to regulate artificial intelligence, unlike Joe Biden, who wants big tech to rein in AI voluntarily. There are a little more than 100 days left. She can win this, but the next couple of weeks will tell us a lot, not just about who she is as a candidate, but how she will govern. Now, Joe Biden is the most consequential president since LBJ because he understood how bills became law. For better or worse, a lot of what happens in Washington comes down to stroking egos. This, right now, is her big test. Can she stroke enough egos to get the entire Democratic Party behind her? Kamala's people skills will be under the microscope between now and the convention. And by that, I mean she needs to make a deal with Bernie Sanders. I also don't think she wins making this race about the prosecutor versus the felon. Not enough swing voters care that Trump is a criminal. They know that already. We saw in May, while the Manhattan district attorney put Trump on trial and then convicted him, that Trump's poll numbers skyrocketed. And the fundraising, it was a juggernaut for fundraising. It was only in early June, after the criminal trial in Manhattan, that Biden's poll numbers began to pick up. And then, of course, June 27th, a month ago today, the debate. So I don't think she wins as the prosecutor. She doesn't win as the California Attorney General. Her record as a prosecutor is flawed, unimpressive, and cruel. In the next couple of weeks, the Trump campaign will trot out charges that, as California Attorney General, Kamala Harris defied a Supreme Court order for her state to release nonviolent criminal offenders. I remember this when I was living in Los Angeles. The Supreme Court ruled California's overcrowded prisons were in direct violation of our Constitution's ban against cruel and unusual punishment. They had prisoners sharing beds, 40 guys to one toilet, but she refused to obey that order from the Supreme Court. With one of the lawyers in her office, she was California Attorney General, and one of her lawyers put into writing a memo insisting they need to keep the nonviolent criminal offenders behind bars because that's who they use to fight forest fires, right? The 13th Amendment, the loophole, free labor, they outlawed slavery except in prison. And California uses nonviolent criminal offenders to put out all those forest fires. And they said, someone in her office put it in writing, if we let them out, we don't have the manpower to fight forest fires. She also failed to prosecute Steve Mnuchin, who went on to become Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, even though right after the financial crisis, Steve Mnuchin's bank in California literally stole people's homes with forged documents. He foreclosed on people's homes with forged documents. He belonged either in prison or as Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary. He got the latter because Kamala, as California Attorney General, refused to prosecute Steve Mnuchin. I also think there was a campaign contribution involved. As a DA in San Francisco, she prosecuted parents because their kids didn't show up to school. I'm giving you the Oppo research. Get ready for it. This is what they're going to come at her with. Prosecutors don't win elections. Ask Thomas Dewey. Her opening salvo this week was misguided, comparing her accomplishments as a district attorney and attorney general, where she prosecuted all the criminals who committed the same exact crimes Donald Trump has committed. Wrong message. Voters don't care. At least swing voters, the independent voters, don't care about locking Donald Trump up. They want to know, what are you going to do for me? Which is why she needs to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders. You're not going to get elected being tough on crime. That's Donald Trump's gig. You got to strike a deal with, Bernie is withholding an endorsement. He's doing what he did in 2020 with Biden. You want me to hit the campaign trail? Here we go. Build Back Better, which, is the Inflation Reduction Act is a slimmed down version, an anorexic version of Bernie's Build Back Better. So, she's hitting most of the right notes, I think, this week, but her campaign is currently experiencing a corporate takeover of Obama loyalists. Eric Holder, Trump's attorney general, is vetting her running mates. This worries me. David Plouffe, Obama's campaign manager, who later went on to work for Uber and Facebook, is reportedly being urged to join her campaign. He's a bad guy. Her brother-in-law is the general counsel for Uber. Now, to her credit, despite having her sister marry the general counsel for Uber, to Kamala's credit, she did come out in favor of a California bill that would make it harder for Uber drivers to be classified as independent contractors. It took her a bit longer back in 2019 than it took Bernie and Elizabeth Warren to speak out in favor of this legislation, but eventually she did, and eventually that legislation didn't pass. I am worried that she thinks she's going to win by placating the donor class. That might have worked for Obama, but it was Obama and Eric Holder's decision, partly not to prosecute the bankers. This partly gave rise to Donald Trump's popularity, mostly racism and stupidity, but their failure to prosecute the bankers contributed to Donald Trump's rise. I'm worried that she's listening to Obama. We're getting word that Obama is about to endorse her. If you go all in with Obama, you're fighting the last war, or a war from 2008 and 2012. This is how armies lose, when they fight the last war, because this war is D-Day. This election is war. All elections are war. And this election is not 2008 and 2012. American voters are not going to fall for hope and change, okay? American voters are not going to project onto her all their hopes and wishes for themselves and America the same way they did with Barack Obama. This is a completely different election. This election comes down to fake populism versus real populism. Trump's phony populism takes on a patina of truth when the Democrats are running a candidate who is way too cozy with big money donors. She needs to make a deal with Bernie. She hasn't made her deal with Bernie Sanders yet. She will lose if she doesn't strike a big deal with Bernie Sanders. He's holding out. He's waiting for her to come to him with an offer. And not an offer that preys on his ambition, that preys on his principles. What are you going to do for the working class and for the poor? If she Obama-fies her campaign, this becomes a perfect recipe for 2016 all over again. What worries me is the idea that one of the chief reasons Joe Biden was pushed aside is because Joe had become beholden to Bernie, AOC, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Squad, and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Biden knew he couldn't win against Trump without them. He knew that back in 2021. And that's why Bernie, AOC, the Squad, and especially Black Democrats were sticking with Joe Biden until the bitter end. Now, another argument can be made that Joe had simply gotten too old, and he couldn't make the case for a second term. And I believe that's partly true, and I think that's one of the reasons there was so much of a consensus within the party for him to step aside. But I do think a much stronger argument can be made that Biden got pushed out because he understood the shifting political winds better than anybody else and was moving way too far towards Bernie. See, Biden got it. If you want to win this election, not 2020, where he said nothing's going to fundamentally change. Biden won in 2020 as, someone paying lip service to the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but in the pocket of big business, union-busting lawyers, And that reassured voters and donors. That's 2020. Joe Biden understood 2024. If you want to win 2024 with the new rise of Donald Trump, you cater to Bernie. You present real populism. But the Obama wing of the Democratic Party says, what's the point of winning elections if you end up having to cater to Bernie Sanders? These people, like Nancy Pelosi, would rather lose elections and not be in power than have to suck up to AOC and Bernie. So, with Kamala Harris, this campaign is about to get very corporate. The big money donors turned off the spigot until Joe finally agreed to step aside. And then when they saw it was Kamala topping the ticket, big money, record money began pouring back in from Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and Wall Street. To be honest, I root for Nancy Pelosi. I root for Obama. I don't want them in the leadership, but they're better than the alternative. I was thrilled when I heard that Kamala set a one-day record for fundraising on Sunday after she announced. I get it. I know you cannot win without a lot of money. But I also know you can lose with a lot of money. I also know you can lose because of a lot of money, especially in an election like this where faux populists like Trump play to the aggrieved white working class who don't care about the Constitution or any threats to our democracy. They don't care. You're not going to win this election appealing to the rule of law. You're not going to win this election warning that our institutions, our Constitution is at stake, which they are. There's no question. But you're not going to win because Trump has succeeded in making the rule of law, the Constitution, and democracy part of the culture war. He's made it so the people right now who are warning about the future of our country, he's made it so they come across no different from the effete liberals, the hyper-educated elitists who care more about showing off how smart they are than making life better for half this country who can't come up with $500 for a medical emergency. When half this country can't come up with $500 for a medical emergency, Trump succeeds in making the people screaming about the Bill of Rights come off as effete, pampered snobs. He's turned it into a culture war. It's very dangerous. This is what fascists do. This is exactly what Hitler did. I'm sorry, but it's what he is just taking from Hitler and the Bible. At his convention speech, where he describes where he fell, I got shot and I was covered in blood, and then people thought I was dead, so I rose up. Did you hear the speech? He's pinching from Hitler and Jesus. He's turned the narrative of the assassination attempt into death and resurrection. And he talks about the wounds. Even before the assassination attempt, he talks about the wounds that have been inflicted on him, like the stations of the cross. He's pulling from Hitler and trying to convince the crazies that he's Jesus. Look, you're not going to win in November. Democrats are not going to win by scaring voters. And Biden kind of understood this. It's why he started to tack to the left in 2021. So, Kamala needs to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders. Otherwise, I think she has a difficult road ahead. If she thinks she can win Michigan without Bernie Sanders' full-throated endorsement, she's reading the wrong tea leaves and listening to the same exact people Hillary listened to in 2016. Right now, she is poised to win. But a week ago, Trump was. A lot can change, which is why she needs to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders right now. This is the mop-up for July 27th, 2024. Happy birthday to my nephew Leonard's mother, my sister Leonora. Leonora, happy birthday. And teach your son Leonard how to spell. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Okay, good news. This is good. I'm happy. We have a new poll fresh out of the oven, and it's good news. A brand new Morning Consult poll of 11,297 registered voters now shows Vice President Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump by 1 point in a head-to-head matchup. This is great news. So, I can't tell you what's going to happen on Election Day, but I can tell you August, when it comes to polling, will not be kind to Donald Trump. There's already a memo circulating within the RNC warning everybody, strap in, because the news, at least from the standpoint of polling, is about to get really depressing for Donald Trump. Now, there are several innumerable intangibles that can change all of this. Harris can end up blowing it by picking the wrong running mate. She could fail to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders, who has yet to endorse her, and her people skills are about to be put to a critical test as she moves all the Biden loyalists off her campaign and replaces them with Obama devotees who made Joe Biden's life just as miserable when he was vice president as Biden loyalists made Kamala Harris's life miserable when she was vice president. We know she was not happy in the White House. She felt marginalized the same way Biden felt when he was vice president. Nobody likes being that close to power when you're the vice president and not having any. Nobody likes being vice president. But now it's all changed, and August is hers to lose. Not the election, August. I don't know what happens after Labor Day, but right now she has the wind at her back, and the next 30 some odd days are crucial. She has to come into Labor Day leading Trump in the polls, in the outer perimeters of the margin of error. Because after Labor Day, then the numbers settle back down and we go back, it reverts to a dead heat. But right now, we need to see a surge in her numbers, national numbers. The month of August has to be hers. If it's not, then it's going to be a very difficult election come November, because polls affect strategy. So if she opens up a new pathway to 270, then in August, Trump starts reallocating his assets and he becomes vulnerable if the polls start moving. Polls are very important. They're not determinative of what happens in November, but they are what Trump will be making his decisions based on. He lives off polls. We have more good news, bad news for Donald Trump. A New York Times Siena poll of 1,142 likely voters. This is an A-plus poll, as is Morning Consult. This New York Times Siena poll now shows Vice President Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump by 1 percentage point. Now, that's in a 5-way race if Bobby Kennedy and Jill Stein are on the ballot, which they won't be in every state. But that's good news. That's a national poll taken on Wednesday, was released yesterday. Kennedy in a national poll gets 5 points. Jill Stein gets nothing. The same poll of registered voters with Kennedy and Stein off the ballot shows Trump beating Harris by 1. So we're beginning to see that Kennedy right now is eating in to low information Democrats who don't know he's a Trojan horse for Donald Trump. But this is all good news for Harris. They're going to have to go after Bobby Kennedy Jr. They're going to have to expose him because he is working for and with Donald Trump. He's already talking about accepting a cabinet position in Donald Trump's White House. And because we have low information Democrats, hard to believe, they see the name Bobby Kennedy Jr. and think, oh, there's my protest vote against Joe Biden. Again, the pendulum, the polling pendulum, has to continue to move in Kamala's direction before Labor Day. She has to be leading in the national polls outside the margin of error. Change Research. This is a 1.5-star polling franchise. Not the best, kind of at the bottom of the barrel. But Change Research, new poll this morning, shows Kamala Harris beating Trump by 1 percentage point in a national poll of 2,137 registered voters. And that poll finished right after Joe Biden delivered his farewell speech Wednesday night. The same poll, and this is why I bring this up, the same poll shows nearly half of all registered voters are now saying Joe Biden's decision to step aside has awakened them. It has made them more interested in this election, more motivated now to vote. So again, this isn't an A-plus poll. It's at the bottom of the barrel. But I thought I would mention it to demonstrate the massive opportunity right now for Kamala Harris to seize the momentum. But she needs to start putting big polling numbers on the board in the lead up to the convention and right after. If she can do that, then when things settle after Labor Day and it reverts to a dead heat, Donald Trump won't know how to allocate his resources. If she gets a surge in August, he will be confused. So let's turn to swing states. Remember, the blue wall is Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That was where Biden was either going to live or die, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I've been over this, so that's the blue wall. But now with Biden gone, there is serious evidence that Kamala Harris has opened up a new path to 270, and it goes right through the South. If she can change this map, Trump is in trouble. He has money, but zero ground game. There is no ground game in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. I talked about that Wall Street Journal article on my last show that says he's spending money in Wisconsin. Joe Biden had 50 offices set up in Wisconsin. None for Donald Trump, but he's spending money there. Yeah, on Melania's stylist. So he has no ground game. If he has to start worrying about other states besides the blue wall, then the entire operation is spread way too thin. He will lose. He has no surrogates. Nobody. Kamala has Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Hillary, and Bill Clinton, Barack and Michelle. But she doesn't have Bernie. With Bernie, she's got a murderer's row of politicians out on the trail for her, plus her husband, plus Gavin Newsom, plus whoever she picks as her running mate. Also, we've got abortion on the ballot in key swing states, as well as incredibly popular Democratic candidates for Senate who have been running way ahead of Joe Biden in swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, Tammy Baldwin, Slotkin in Michigan, Ruben Gallego in Arizona. They're all running way ahead of Joe Biden. This election is hers to lose. She's got this. She can do this, but she's got to make a deal with Bernie. Biden, let me get back to some polls here. Biden was holding his own in Michigan and Wisconsin, but he was definitely cratering in Pennsylvania. He was considerably outside the margin of error in Pennsylvania. And that's why Pelosi and Obama no longer saw a path to 270. It was Pennsylvania. Remember, Trump has only prepared to take the fight to these three states, the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. He wasn't prepared for a larger map. That's why he picked J.D. Vance as his running mate. He didn't think he needed anybody in the South. He didn't think Georgia, North Carolina, or Florida. I'll get to Florida. He didn't think there was any possibility. He won't admit it to himself, but he's got buyer's remorse when it comes to J.D. Vance. A new Emerson College poll of 850 registered Pennsylvania voters, it wrapped Tuesday. It now shows Trump beating Harris by only 2 points. This is good. That's within the margin of error. That same poll showed Trump beating Biden by 5 points just 2 weeks ago. This is not good for Trump in Pennsylvania. Momentum is on Harris's side. But, like I'm going to keep telling you, she's got to be winning in Pennsylvania before Labor Day. Let's go to Wisconsin. Biden was usually running even with Trump in Wisconsin, sometimes ahead. The same Emerson poll of 845 registered Wisconsin voters now shows Harris beating Trump by 1 point. It's good. It's within the margin of error. It's good. Again, Trump, before Harris was topping the ticket, knew that Joe Biden's last stand was the blue wall, those three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That's where Trump was going to take the fight. He cannot afford to fight outside the proverbial blue wall. If he has to take the fight to other battleground states, he doesn't have the ground game. He does not have the surrogates. I just listed all of Kamala's surrogates: Joe, Jill, Barack, Michelle, Bill and Hillary, maybe Bernie. He doesn't have the resources. He doesn't have any Mike Pence, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney. Who of the old Republican guard is going to get out on the stump for him? He's on his own. He lacks the resources and the smarts to play on a bigger map. 2 months ago, I said Michigan and Pennsylvania were solid blue. I said Wisconsin was going to be the iffiest of the 3 states that make up the blue wall. But since the debate, polling in Wisconsin ticked up for Biden, while Michigan stayed flat and Pennsylvania tanked. Pennsylvania tanked for Joe. The week before Joe Biden called it quits, he was tanking in Pennsylvania. Again, he can't win Pennsylvania. He had a very narrow path to 270. And if no Pennsylvania, no 270. Let's go to Michigan. Same brand new Emerson poll shows Harris and Trump even. Now, this is important. This is why they really have to start going after Kennedy. Brand new Emerson poll shows Harris and Trump even when Kennedy's on the ballot. And he will be on the ballot in Michigan. He gets 5% in Michigan. Jill Stein and Cornel West get 1% each. Kennedy is going to be a factor in Michigan. He's polling better there than he does in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. As we get closer to November and the race tightens, Kennedy will not be a factor in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. We don't even know if he's on the ballot there. He hasn't officially gotten on the Wisconsin or Pennsylvania ballot. But he's on the ballot in Michigan. He made it. He's on the ballot in Michigan, where there is a large Arab American population that is thoroughly disgusted by how Biden handled the war in Gaza. All it takes is a couple of thousand votes to turn the election. Hillary lost Michigan by 11,000 votes. Kennedy will be a factor in Michigan. The Democrats have to really start going after Bobby Kennedy Jr. so low information Democrats learn that he's the antithesis of his father. And if Kamala wants to win Michigan, she needs to strike a deal with Bernie Sanders. She has to make some promises, some progressive promises, and she has to keep them. More good news. I didn't think this was going to happen. We're seeing the race now tighten in Georgia, at least according to that same Emerson poll, where Trump now leads Harris by just 2 in a head-to-head matchup, well within the margin of error. This is good. This is great news. Kemp, the governor, has done a stellar job suppressing the black vote in Georgia. It might be as bad, if not worse, than what DeSantis did in Florida. They have made it really hard. They have targeted black voters in Georgia. If Kamala can get the black voters to stand in line for 12 hours without anybody being allowed to give them water, Georgia could be in play. But do not underestimate the voter suppression of black voters in Georgia. But polls show it right now to be a dead heat. 2 weeks ago in Georgia, same poll, Trump was beating Biden by 6. I, for the past month, thought Biden was never going to win Georgia. He won it in 2020. But for the time being, it seems to be back in play. And I cannot stress this enough. States need to be in play. She doesn't need to win these states, but they need to be in play. She's got to have Trump playing defense in places like Georgia or North Carolina. Look, if Harris works this right, she's got some big decisions to make in the next 2 weeks. If she works this right, she has the makings of a landslide at least on the electoral map. But she has to pick the right running mate in order to win Georgia, in order to win North Carolina, in order to put Florida into play. She doesn't need to win Florida. She just has to put Trump back on his heels and playing defense there. And if she doesn't strike a deal with Bernie, I don't see an easy win for her in Michigan. A little easier right now in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I don't see, without Bernie, she's going to have a harder time, especially in Michigan, Let's go to Arizona. Before Sunday, right before Joe Biden dropped out, I had taken Arizona out of the blue column. It was cratering. Biden was losing to Trump 2 weeks ago by 7 points. Nothing's moved so far. She hasn't been able to move Arizona. Same Emerson poll now shows Kamala Harris down by 8 in Arizona. That's with Kennedy on the ballot. Down by 5 when it's just a head-to-head against Trump. There's no guarantee. I don't think Kennedy is on the ballot yet in Arizona. So Arizona could be problematic. I do think the Republican candidate for Arizona Senate, Kari Lake, is a major drag on the Trump vote. Democrat Ruben Gallego has been leading Kari Lake consistently in the polls all year. I haven't seen one poll where Ruben Gallego is losing to the odious Kari Lake. So Harris could benefit from that. Arizona looks tough. Of the 5 states Biden won in 2020 that Hillary didn't win in 2016, Arizona now looks the toughest for Kamala Harris. Biden won Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those are the 5 states Hillary didn't win. There's now talk of Kamala picking Arizona Senator Mark Kelly as her running mate. I'm hearing a lot about how great former astronaut Mark Kelly. But you have to ask, by doing that, would Kamala be playing defense when she should be on offense? Is Arizona worth fighting for? Why do you pick Arizona Senator Mark Kelly? That's a defensive move to keep Arizona, which, as we know, Biden carried. But isn't it the smarter move, maybe, I don't know, to sacrifice Arizona, pick a running mate who can open up the South? Pick somebody who creates a blue detour that goes through North Carolina, down to Georgia, and dare I say, Florida. What else geographically would Arizona Senator Mark Kelly bring to the map? I don't know. Can he deliver North Carolina? Can he deliver Georgia, possibly Florida? I don't know. Maybe he could. But you're putting all your chips on Arizona and maybe Nevada. Nevada could be in doubt. So he'll give you Nevada and Arizona. Look, there are a lot of gale force winds scattering conventional wisdom everywhere. Most Americans, until this week, haven't been following the election. They just started following this because it just got interesting. Joe Biden stepped aside. So you could say the presidential election started on Sunday when Biden stepped away. In many ways, we have to throw out everything we thought we knew about this race. Everything. But even though we're starting at square one, maybe square one, this, at least August, is Kamala's to lose. Be forewarned about August. There is the potential that August polling will be all over the map. We might see mini spikes well within the margin of error going into Labor Day, where one week she's up, another week he's up. And that won't be a good sign. We need to see her, to kick this off, we need her polling to be really impressive. What will make me happy is all of us turning cocky by August, mid-August, during the convention. I want to see polls right before the convention and then the post-convention bounce, where we start, talking about cabinet members. And then I expect Labor Day we go back to being terrified that Trump is going to win. Everything depends now on whether Kamala can ride the wave, which then comes crashing down after Labor Day. And then we start all over again, but with new information and new possibilities, right? If she gets a surge in August, that's new information and new possibilities. It will revert to a dead heat after Labor Day, but it changes. There's the potential for a new electoral map. I am telling you, Donald Trump is not equipped to take this battle beyond the blue wall. If she can go on offense, forget trying to hold on to all 5 states that Joe Biden won and Hillary lost. If she can open up 1, 2, maybe 3 new states, just put them into play, Trump will lose. He doesn't have the resources for a bigger map. Florida, let me talk about Florida. Before the June debate, Florida looked like it could be in play because of abortion. There was serious talk that Joe Biden could win Florida because of abortion. There's a ballot initiative, we've talked about this, in Florida to enshrine a woman's right to choose into that state's constitution, just as Ron DeSantis's 6-week abortion ban is going into effect. Depending on who she picks as a vice president, Florida, Ron DeSantis's voter suppression of black votes notwithstanding, Florida could be in play. And again, she doesn't need to win Florida. She just needs to put it in play. She needs to keep Trump in Florida. She needs to have him being forced to play defense down there. I think he loses Pennsylvania if he has to shore up his defense in Florida. He, again, won't have the money or the ground game to win Pennsylvania if he's playing defense in Florida. What I would do if I were running her campaign is I would make a deal with Bernie Sanders. Then I would have Joe and Jill Biden, Hillary and Bill Clinton, the Obamas. I would have them move down to Florida after Labor Day. Just fight Trump in Florida. Let him think that you're seeing polling that says he's going to lose Florida. His ego couldn't handle losing Florida. keep him down in Florida. Make him spend more time and money in Florida. That way, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania become easy pickups. There is a lot for swing voters and independent voters to digest right now. Now, you got to remember everything that I like about Harris. She is a strong, black, liberal female. It's everything Trump voters detest. So it's voter turnout. Before Harris became the nominee, and right after Trump picked J.D. Vance, right? So right before Joe dropped out. This election, a week ago, 5 days ago, this election was going to be aggrieved white working class men versus suburban women, right? That was what the race was going to be. This race was going to be decided either by aggrieved white working class men or women in the suburbs of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The question then, until Sunday, was who's going to show up? If suburban women in those three key swing states show up, Biden would have won. If aggrieved white working class male voters show up, Trump is going to win. But now it's, they threw the map up in the air. A little of the map. We know how most states are going to go. She's got the wind at her back. The convention in Chicago is going to be a love letter to Joe Biden, which in turn will begin the sales job of reminding voters of his accomplishments and what the Democratic Party can do when they're in charge. She will bask in that. He's going to help her as much as Joe's going to help her as much as he possibly can, because this is a legacy run. If she wins, then he goes down in history as one of the most successful presidents ever. So he's all in. And he has a lot of good news that he can give her credit for. The economy, we have new numbers out this morning. The GDP grew 2.8% for the second quarter of 2024. That's twice the pace of the first quarter 2024. It grew at, the first quarter was 1.4%. Unemployment now stands at 4.1%. These are incredible numbers. It's, as they say, it's not too hot and not too cold. Early reports from the Federal Reserve are now suggesting inflation is about to dip below 3%. The fundamentals, forget the polls, the fundamentals, the currents underneath are going to push Kamala to the finish line. So this is hers to lose. Meanwhile, Trump has nobody. He's on his own. Pence won't campaign for him. George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, all of them have said that they're not only not going to campaign for him, they're not going to vote for him. I think George W. Bush is the only one who has remained silent. If she can make it look like the map has been expanded beyond the blue wall, his ground game is destroyed. He doesn't have enough players to put on the field. This is going to be a test. The next 2 weeks will be a test of Kamala's people skills. She needs to unite this party and convince them that this election is about something larger than her. She has to convince, in the next 2 weeks, the Democratic Party to work just as hard to get her elected as the Democratic Party did to throw Joe Biden to the curb. If the Democratic Party can work as hard to get her elected as they did to get rid of Joe Biden, she could win by a landslide. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you enjoyed any of today's episode, please hit the like button, hit the notifications button, and the best way to help me is to share this with your friends. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com, and we have new merchandise over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Brand new merchandise. Check it out. Or you can get this, the fart filtration mask, or the, what do I have here? And of course this, the thing I'm so proud of, the apron, chef's apron that says, "Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." I will see everybody either Saturday night or Sunday night. Thank you all for listening to me.